news straight ahead. Oh, and I've got the bad news. But to defeat the globalists, we've got to know the bad news. Ignoring the bad news, ignoring the problem got us where we're at today. Waking up to the problem, not compromising, getting aggressive, getting in the tyrants' faces is going to haul us out of the fire. It's going to haul our bacon. It's time to haul our bacon out of the New World Order. Stay with me. So, Time Magazine, that'll soon probably be defunct, just like Newsweek is about to end its print version, and hardly anybody reads their online version either, because they're known enemies of this country. These aren't just well-meaning, dumb liberals. These are people that want to end our sovereignty and bring in world government. Joe Klein is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations that's sworn to that aim. I mean, go read what they write. They are the ones that want, just 2 months ago in their publication, called for 4,000 plus troops to be in every U.S. city, with the head of the Army in there talking about how great it's going to be to have troops on the street. That's how we know what's coming. By the way, our report is at the top story on Drudge Report. DHS prepares for civil unrest as Obama poised to destroy Second Amendment. That's the article, but the article actually gets into surveillance drones have a new mission. According to the Department of Homeland Security, they will be used for public safety. Wait a minute, there were hundreds of articles last month saying InfoWars and Drudge were wrong and that there weren't drones being used to spy on us, even though we had links to them arresting cattle thieves in North Dakota with it, and watching citizens and police departments getting them with shotguns mounted on them. I mean, that was in the news, but it was in hundreds of newspapers that it wasn't true and we made it up by pointing out that the EPA had manned aircraft spying on farmers and that they weren't drones. But yeah, but in the other program, back to 2009, they did have drones. So they lied to everyone, Washington Post, you name it, said it didn't exist, even though they announced the purchase of 30,000 of them in the new FAA $46 billion budget. So that happened, and again, they play this game and going, doesn't exist. As soon as opposition mounts, because farmers were mad about getting spied on. Doesn't exist, and then, oh yeah, we're going to use these for public safety. You know, you drive to an illegal checkpoint, it's for your safety. Or they're, out there writing all these tickets to, put the money into a foreign bank black hole, it's public safety. They kick down the, your door without a warrant, it's public safety. The TSA gropes your wife and your daughters and your son, it's public safety. The IRS tries to pass legislation so you can't leave the U.S. if they say you haven't paid all your taxes, no judge, no jury, it's public safety. All of this is public safety. And Joe Klein, basically calls to ban guns in here for public safety and how horrible it is that people are being killed. So, how guns won, why Americans have turned against gun control. And we have the cover of it up at Infowars.com with my little comment under it. Now, that said, I gave you the good news. It's true. Depending on the poll you look, 65 to 75%, it's in between that, are now pro-Second Amendment. And the kleptocrats, the criminals that run our government, the offshore banks that brag they've hijacked our country publicly, they brag everywhere like we're idiots. They get the fact Obama calls you bitter clingers, you want your Bible, you want your gun. That's all that's left in this culture, is that people are still somewhat Christian and we've got guns. And the system recognizes that, and so they assault it every chance they get. I'm going to talk about the Olympics later, the opening ceremony that was incredibly anti-family. I'm sitting there with my children, and it's got women kissing, men grabbing each other's buttocks, and people are like, oh, get with the program. Really? You want 4-year-olds to look at that? It's a perverted, out-of-control agenda, and I, for one, am sick of it. Okay? When you've got sex on during the family hour, it's basically pedophilia. And it's not because, I'm good, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes and can't handle it. I want my children innocent. Okay? They got stuff on TV now that I didn't learn about till college. And let me tell you, I had a lot of girlfriends. It wasn't like I was just hanging out in the library. Okay? The point is, leave our kids alone. I'm boycotting the Olympics. Everybody's like, oh, come on. Or some people are. I'm going to talk about that. But look, I gave you the good news. People are waking up. They're aware of what's going on. All right? People are waking up. They understand guns are about defending yourself. The system can't and won't protect you. Look at Bloomberg saying, police should go on strike till we all turn our guns in, and calling for a ban of all firearms. Michael Moore said, that's too far. Let's ban down to flintlocks. with black powder. He actually said that on Piers Morgan. You're like, oh, well, you know, they're out of touch. Oh, really? Yeah, they know they're out of touch. It's why they want your guns. The banking system offshore has signed us on to 1.5 quadrillion. That's 1,500 trillion, 644 trill. Washington Post says they've signed us on to that global debt. Total, it's 1.5 trill, 1.5 quadrille, and they've signed us on to 644 trill. Look it up. That isn't our debt. Our debt's 15 trill, not 644 trill. And they intend on making us be their slaves. See, and they can't, see, they come in with a monopoly game to take over through fraud, but they want to back it up with paramilitary force. And that is what is going on here. That's what's unfolding here. So the good news is people are waking up on every front. The numbers, the polls, the culture shows it. People now know liberalism isn't liberal. It's authoritarianism masquerading as a nanny state. You know, they say it's for your best interest because they love you. No, they're really ravenous control freaks that want you to be their property and want to run your life. Here's the bad news. It's precisely because we're waking up, they're accelerating their program, and they're going to stage events. Even Larry Pratt, the head of Gunners of America on my show, in fact, let's cue that up, guys, said that, yeah, we have to look at Obama staging the shooting. Fox News even did an analysis saying it doesn't add up. The mother says she never said her son did it. The guy's so drugged up he can't even talk. They reported multiple shooters. He was under an Air Force psychiatric person. Always the same MO. Just like Theodore Kaczynski, just like Sirhan, just like Tim McVeigh. Oh, you didn't know they were all under famous mind control doctors? Some of them the most famous in the world. That's how dumb they think you are. Oh, here's this doctor. Yeah, he was under him before it happened. He's the head of psych warfare. It's no big deal. Sure, he's up there on the, you know, being arraigned. He can't talk. He's drooling. Everything's fine. He did it. Yes, yes. Yeah, right before the UN treaty. But I digress. I digress here. Let me get into the meat and potatoes now, right now for you. Then I'm going to come back and go over all the articles and then your phone calls. The good news is we've woken up. The bad news is the system cares. They know exactly what is going on. Oh, they don't want to do what you want and have liberty and prosperity and a free market and the Bill of Rights Constitution. But they do care. When people say the elite, the controllers, the architects, the social engineers don't care, they're wrong. They do care. And they know you're waking up, and they want to enforce their will on you. People say, oh, Big Pharma doesn't care if they kill you. Oh, no, they care. They want to kill you. This is a crime of passion. They passionately want to enslave us. They're passionate eugenicists. So here is the good news. The good news is people are waking up. The bad news is the system knows that and is accelerating their program. And when we come back in a moment, I'm going to give you the devastating news. But again, it's not negative. It's scary, it's frightening, it confirms everything, but it lets us know where we stand. They admit that we're awake, they admit the majority of us want guns, and they're announcing they don't care, they're going to ban almost all of them. The legislation's been introduced, and the Republican leadership is lining up to support it. You heard me right. The Republican leadership is lining up to support it. Basically all of them. We're going to tell you about that when we come back from this quick break. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com, where we still have the First Amendment. We must fight for our rights. Nobody's going to save us. God helps those that help themselves. And as the people wake up to the tyrannical government we have, that Second Amendment the founders put in place is now more valuable than ever. And the ATF has come out and said in a public press release they want to ban most shotguns because they're not for sporting if they're semi-auto. Well, they're not for sporting. The Second Amendment isn't about hunting. It's about defending yourself against tyranny. So, again, the good news is that they're having to play possum and run up the white flag, circle the wagons, and say, oh, how guns won, why Americans have turned against gun control. No amount of staged events, no amount of Operation Northwoods, where you call for mass shootings, no amount of those is going to get our trust back, okay? We know who you are. We know what's going on. And we know statistically we have a better chance of a honeybee There's only about 19 to 20 on average. You can look it up, mass shooting deaths above 5 people shot a year. In groups of larger than 5, there's less than 20 people killed a year. Hundreds die from honeybee stings. I give them the same numbers for terrorism. National News has gone and researched it and actually stolen my headline. That's the idea. So people now know it's all a bunch of hype. They see you up there pushing the fear. They know who you are. They know Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer and Obama and all these anti-gun people have bodyguards and their own guns. We know that all the top Democrats are the only ones that get issued special gun permits in New York. We understand that you're all about force. You want us disarmed so you can run our lives. I mean, Bloomberg wants to tell you what you can eat. He wants to ban popcorn and milk products in New York now that he's over 16-ounce soft drinks. These are vicious social engineers. There's nothing liberal about them. So that's the good news, we're awake. The bad news is they've introduced in the Cybersecurity Act a provision that bans, and I don't just mean from sale, it says possession in the U.S. of all semi-autos and clips that hold more than 10 rounds. That's most of the guns in this country. Bans them. And it looks like the cybersecurity may pass. Oh, but they told you, Obama a week ago, he didn't want gun control, though we should ban all semi-autos. Only soldiers need those, he said. Remember that? All of them said ban everything semi-auto. Bloomberg's like, that's not enough. Have the police stand down till all the guns are turned in because cops are being killed by guns. Really? It's almost 2-to-1 automobiles killing you. And in the areas where they have disarmed the public, a lot more cops get killed. And the police know that. You've lost there. I've seen national polls as high as 97% of police being totally Second Amendment. Not the police chiefs that are basically federally funded and put in. You think you're getting your local police chief, but federal boards recommend them. And if you don't take who they recommend, you don't get the grants. And most of the police chiefs that have been publicly anti-gun, it's so negative for them now, they've got to say they're pro-Second Amendment. It's happening everywhere because we're winning the hearts and minds. The bad news is the system doesn't care. You know, I noticed Friday when we had an article analyzing the official draft of the UN treaty, and they've now released it. We got the leak, but it's Article 15 says states will aid each other inside nations confiscating firearms. It says you have an individual right of states, of actor governments, not individual. It's all in there. And the Washington Post is like, well, there's not too much gun control. It's overblown. Oh, yeah. And Hillary was set to sign that Friday. They've kicked the can down the road. It could be within 2 weeks, but they've got to do it within 6 months. The word is they'll do it after the election, sign the treaty, and they don't care if the Senate doesn't ratify. Obama is shutting down power plants everywhere. That's in the news, even though Congress didn't pass the law. That's in the news today. We're going to be going over it. Record number of coal-fired generators to be shut down in 2012. Well, yeah, the head of the Energy Department said, quote, we're going to shut down massive numbers, but only Obama's people get the waiver. Now, let me give you the really bad news, folks, because I don't just jump right into it. I want to give you the history and the backstory here. The UN treaty is still going forward. They've introduced legislation, I'll give you the subsection here in a moment, in the Cybersecurity Act that turns over the Internet, allows open spying without warrants, Internet IDs, Internet taxation, total control. And by the way, they're going to charge you just to be on the web and track you with all of it. Here is CBS Local out of New York. Retailers ready to force